Welcome everybody. The weather outside is so difficult, so I know that you've all made a lot of effort to be to that, so thank you. And I've been asked to talk about finance, and it's a tricky one. So, just a little about who I am. So, I am a welfare benefits manager for Hammersmith and Fulham. So, I also chair the Croydon Sickle Cell and Thalassaemia support group. And I'm also very honoured to be a vice chair of the patient public health with Patrick, who is around somewhere. I'm a mental health first aid and wellbeing champion. And so what I'm talking to you about today is something that I've been passionate about for over 30 years. And I've written that to these talks, but in 10 minutes, very difficult to cover everything. So I will rely on questions if you have any. So when we talk about finance, there really are two routes to financial support. Either you're going to have to make a claim for benefits, or you'll be working. So those are the two kind of advantages, unless you're very fortunate to be wealthy already, in which case, what for you? So when we talk about benefits, we're talking about social security. And there are 32 benefits in the social security system. So I'm not even going to begin to go through all with you here today. But the most common ones are universal credit. And some of you will be familiar with PIP, personal independence payment. And if you're under 16, that would be disability allowance. Under 65 would be attendance. So benefits is one form of support that you might need to apply for if you find that you are simply not well enough because of your health to work. So the other route to financial support is employment. That's obviously being employed or being self-employed. So that's the way we tend to all finance our living. So for people living with sickle cell, you may need to combine both those routes to have income. So that means that you may be able to do some work. You may be well, you may be able to work full time. But you might find, and what tends to be quite typical, is that you work periodically. So you might have 0 contracts or hours that fluctuate, you can modify around your health fund and your commitments. So to top that up, you might need to claim a benefit because the earnings that you have simply won't cover off all of your basic living expenses. So benefits covers a huge remit. Benefits can help you cover the cost of your rent, cover the cost of your council tax. Now we call both those things priority expenses. Obviously, if you don't pay your rent, you will ultimately lose your home. If you don't pay council tax, you can end up in court. And you can also get a custodial sentence for not paying council tax. Since COVID, most local authorities have taken a step back from that kind of enforcement work. But you also probably still end up getting a summons to tell you you're on a wall in, you haven't paid, and you need to enter in some kind of full payment. So in terms of employment support, access to work is actually a grant. So if you felt that you could get into employment, but you need additional, whether it's equipment or support to be in that job, then access to work might be a grant that you want to apply for. The access to work grant can do things like pay for adjustable desks, special chairs, other types of equipment that you might need. Whether you need a special monitor if you're having problems with your sight. So it's entirely possible to use the access to work grant to help with those things. What I would say to you, unfortunately, is that it has a huge backlog. I've supported people to do access to work applications at the beginning of this year who are only just going through periods of assessment. So he's thought that work was for you and he wanted to try something. You might want to consider making an access to work application now rather than when you finally get the job. Or if you are with an employer at the moment and they don't seem to be meeting your needs for whatever reason, but if it is financial, you could say, I can apply for this access to work so you don't have to go and get that stuff for me so that I can keep my job. So there are things like that that the access to work grant can be. And it is a grant, but you don't pay back any of this. So they cover the cost of the items that you might need in order to work. Now, Job Centre Plus, they are not an advice service. I know quite often people think they'll go to the Job Centre and ask them questions and get some answers. You won't. The Job Centre is there to process claims and to support you on the journey. They do not give advice. So you cannot go into your local job centre and say, I've got this situation. Can you tell me what I need to do? They won't be able to do that for you. So just to put it in context, most people will be accessing Job Centre Plus offices because they're making a claim for universal credit. So I haven't planned to go into a lot of detail about benefits, but universal credit was rolled out and began to be rolled out from 2017, and it took over 6 benefits. So when it took over those 6 benefits, they were abolished. And technically, it's an easier system, but it has taken them 8 years to roll it out. So it took over income support, job seekers allowance, employment support allowance, the tax credits, and housing benefit. So people in receipt of those 6 benefits would have received what we call migration notice. And then you'd have been given 3 months to make the change over to universal credit. And if they didn't make the change, those benefits stopped anyway. So benefits is it's an important thing. I think that people think it's this wishy-washy thing and people just make claims and there's so much fraud. It absolutely is not. Those people who are claiming benefits are reliant on it just to meet basic living expenses. And benefits are based on law. So it feels wishy-washy, but these regulations are based in law, which is why if you make a fraudulent claim, you can end up in prison. So it's important to get advice. That's where I'm going with that. If you felt that you're not sure, maybe there is some more help you could be getting or should be accessing, get some advice. Please don't listen to hearsay. There are a lot of people who had a lot of anecdotes about bad situations that they've had with benefits, and they share those, and then that person doesn't go off and make a claim. They do without when they could have been getting all that time. So get proper advice on benefits. Don't listen to other people, is what I would say. Another type of employment support is reasonable adjustments. Now, if you are in a work environment, you are entitled to request reasonable adjustments. Reasonable adjustments are just those little tweaks to how you work that's going to help you to be able to maintain your role. That might be, can you start at 10, whereas everybody else is starting at 8? And that might be because you don't want to try and travel at rush hour. You need to have a seat, or it's just not possible for you to be travelling during the rush hour. A reasonable adjustment with your employer might be, you start at 10 and maybe you finish at 6, if that's better, because again, you've missed the rush hour on the other side. That's a reasonable adjustment. Another reasonable adjustment might be within the scope of your employment. So I do home visits, but if I had an officer on my team that had mobility issues, a reasonable adjustment would be that I wouldn't ask him or her or them to go out and do home visits. We'd accommodate that within the rest of the team to see those clients. So a reasonable adjustment is any request that you think you have that will allow you to maintain your role. Um, there isn't a list of what reasonable adjustments are because all jobs are different. So it simply depends on what will suit you to allow you to do that particular job. But never be afraid to ask for a reasonable adjustment. I think a lot of people are hesitant because they think that it indicates they can't do the job, and then they're going to take them down the route of trying to get rid of them. All employers in law are supposed to allow reasonable adjustments. So if you're comfortable and your organisation has a HR department, maybe you want to speak to them first before you speak to your line managers about reasonable adjustments, but never shy away from asking if you need it. Business startups. Now, one of the things that people I've spoken to with sickle cell, my nephew has sickle cell. When he was younger, one of the things that he thought would be his pathway was to run his own business. And he thought that self-employment would be for him because obviously he can then manage the hours, the tasks, and have a bit more control. And again, that's a place that you can go into the job centre to talk about business startups. They do have graphs. They are mostly loans, though. But there are grants available for business startups. People who think that because of their condition, a better route for them is to work for themselves rather than having an employer having control over what they do and when they do it. So just kind of finally touching on benefits, because I don't have a lot of time. I mentioned universal credit. So anyone who is of working age, or basically means anyone under the age of 65, would be claiming universal credit now. Yeah, you can't claim any other. Universal credit is a digital benefit, which basically means it's online. If you can't make an online claim, you can make a telephone claim. But here's the difference between those two platforms. If you make an online claim, you have access to your account. So when you make an online claim for universal credit, it's like having, how many people in here have online banking? You stick your hand up, yeah? Universal credit is just like having an online banking account. So you can log in, you can leave messages there, so no more waiting off an hour on the line to get through to the DWP. It has a two-way journal, so you can leave messages on there for your work coach. You can upload evidence, things like that, documents they may have asked to see. So having an online account is vastly better than making a telephone call for your claim. Because if you make a telephone call for your claim, it's like having benefits from the old days. You have no access. Every time you want to talk to someone or send a message, you've got to call them. You can go into the job centre and speak to the officers there. Most of them are work coaches. You can go into the job centre, speak to a work coach, and they'll try to facilitate whatever you need with your claim. But an online account is better for you. PIP, again, is a benefit for people who have a chronic, long-term health or disability issue. And it's for people over the age of 16 up to 65. So you can't make a new claim for PIP if you're older than 65. And that is split into two parts. They have a daily living component and a mobility component. You can qualify for both, one or the other. So it just depends on how your symptoms impact on you the most. It's not an easy benefit to get. And before I move on to the other two, I just wanted to say, and I know I'm getting indications about the time, but I know that you would have been hearing about these welfare reforms and the changes that are proposed for PICs. And let me put some emphasis on that word, proposed. These changes have not come into effect yet. I know a lot of people are worried in our advice like this, bringing off the hook. People I've heard about PIC, they're going to take it away, and they're proposals at the moment. The green paper is still going through. We, as in the advice sector, are campaigning hard for a lot of the changes to the regulations that they're proposing to not go ahead. You can have your voice heard. If you go to the .gov.uk website, type in PIC reform, they've got pages there where people can put their 2 pennies worth and say why you don't think that the changes they're proposing should go ahead. The main change is that when you claim universal credit, if you're claiming because you're not well enough to work, you have a health assessment. If you pass that health assessment, which basically means, unfortunately, you are too ill to go to work, they pay you a higher rate. Yeah. The proposal is they get away with that, do away with that health assessment, and you will only get that extra amount in your universal credit if you qualify for PIC. Now, PIC is extremely difficult for anyone to get. Most claims go to appeal. Having said that, 65% of appeals are successful, but you could wait a year for an appeal tribunal hearing. So that's the proposal. Do away with what they call the work capability assessment, which pays for a high rate of UC, and rely solely on the fact that you meet qualifying criteria for PIC. If you get PIC, you'll get the higher rate of UC. I hope I haven't lost anyone there because I'm rushing through it and I'm trying to make it in simple terms. So that's the thing. Council tax support. When you claim universal credit, you do have to claim council tax 1 minute.
So much information.
Council tax support, you don't claim at the job centre, you claim it from your local authority. It's not automatic. I meet so many people with council tax arrears who simply thought, I'm getting UC, so all my council tax should be paid. You're entitled. You've got to fill the form in. You've got to fill the form in to get it. So if anyone says to you, I'm on UC, and I keep getting these council tax bills and summons, trust me, they haven't filled the form in. And they just need to go on to the council's webpage or call an advice service. They'll help them to do the form because it's online. NHS costs. If you qualify for universal credit, a lot of your NHS charges are free. Yeah, so free site tests, free dental treatment, free prescriptions, and other things that come along with the fact that you're in receipt of universal credit. If you are on a low income, I'm going to jump down to prepayment prescriptions. If you're not in receipt of universal credit, but you are on a low income, you can pay for a prepayment prescription. And what that does is it massively reduces the cost of your prescriptions. So each item on your prescription at the moment is £9.90, £9.85. So if you've got 3 items on a prescription and those last you 1 month, so you're paying roughly 90, just short of £21 a month. Yeah. If you buy a prepayment certificate, you can get one for 3 months and it's £32. So it's a massive saving. You can also buy an annual one, which is £118. That covers all of your prescriptions for the whole year. So if you are working, you're on a low income, there's no restrictions on who can buy a prepayment prescription. Okay. Anyone can buy one, yeah, but it reduces your costs significantly. So do consider that and share that with friends, carers, healthy homes, those are grants. Again, these are run by your council. Now, they may well have private partners that deliver the service, but you would approach your local authority first. So Healthy Homes does all the kind of work around draft proofing, insulation, loft insulation, all those things about making your home more energy efficient. Now, you can't use it for council, but if you are right with renting privately or a homeowner, Healthy Homes is an assessment you might want to consider if you know your windows are rattling, your doors are rattling. and you know you need to have something that is probably going to be at great expense, consider approaching your local authority for a healthy homes assessment. If you meet their criteria, you would get a grant that work would be done for free. So it's just another thing about your home environment and keeping warm. Okay, so I've kind of thrown a lot of information out there, and I've only skimmed.
Yeah.
Yeah. These services are all available to give you advice. I haven't put contact numbers and addresses and things because they're all over the place. But
You're around today.
I'm around to stay here. Yeah. If you do live in the borough, if you're outside of the borough, it's slightly different. But all of these others provide comprehensive advice. So don't wonder. Go and ask the question and get your answers. I've mentioned the welfare reform, so I'm going to stop there.
Thank you very much for that. This is marvelous. That's good. And then we run into the time for questions. There's one about, what do carers and families do for people with sickle cell condition? What's the best way for that? We've heard of the sickle cell conditions, but people care for the families. Is there anything you can give on that this time?
Yep, so there is a benefit called carer's allowance, and that is for people who are providing care to someone who is receiving either DLA, PIP, or attendance allowance. That's the first rule. The second rule is that the carer cannot be working full-time, so they're working part-time. And the caveat to that is the earnings cannot be more than £138 per week. So it's quite restrictive, but yes, carers can claim that. Within universal credit, there are also allowances for carers. So if you are a carer and you claim universal credit and you tell them that you're looking after someone that's getting picked and provide proof, they can pay a slightly higher level of universal credit as well, if that's the case.
Okay, thank you very much. Round of applause again. Thank you.